10 worst years in human history. I'm gonna assume it might be the 1700s, but you know what? Let's see what happens. Let's see what's up.
Humans have been around for roughly 200,000 years, and honestly, most of that time was spent dying in pools of our own diarrhea.
It's a chill video.
So when you think of the worst years in human history, it's basically all of them. But that would be a boring video. So let's be prisoners of the moment and allow recency bias to cloud our analysis as we rank the top 10 worst years to be alive in human history. Number 10, 1918. This year kicks off with a little something called the Spanish flu. Surprisingly, this flu wasn't actually from Spain, but it was still no bueno. Exact numbers for the death toll are kind of hard to pin down, but estimates range from 20 to 50 million human deaths globally. The Spanish flu was particularly deadly for two reasons. One, it was a brand new strain of the flu, and two, the conditions of the Great War made it so much easier for the disease to spread. Soldiers returning home brought the flu with them, infecting people in remote areas who had no immunity to the virus. What was extra special about the Spanish flu was that it was unusually deadly for young adults compared to other flu viruses of the time, leading to a significantly higher death toll. This disease was terrifying for doctors, not just because of how quickly it spread or how quickly their patients died, but the process of how people died from it. Heliotrope cyanosis was a symptom of the Spanish flu, where a patient's skin would slowly turn purple as their lungs filled with fluid, preventing them from getting enough oxygen into their bloodstream. The blue/purple color would start in their lips and fingers, but eventually spread across their whole body as they neared death. After the patient passed, their entire body would then quickly turn from purple to black. Truly horrific stuff. To make matters worse, 1918 was also the final year of World War I, which saw another 5 million global casualties and made most of Europe no fun. Also in this year, you had the Russian Revolution going on, which ended the House of Romanov for good with the assassination of Nicholas II and his family this year. This revolution allowed Vladimir Lenin to take power, where he established a totalitarian dictatorship that oversaw the mass killing of political dissidents.
What the fuck?
The revolution was marked by brutal civil war and famine,
well,
which
how long is this here?
More. And finally, the Treaty of Versailles was being drafted, which, while not initially terrible, put Germany in a super bad mood that had some pretty major downstream consequences. But more on that later. Number 9, 1492.
What the fuck?
We all know in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But by doing that, Columbus also opened up a portal to hell for nearly everyone who is currently living in the Americas. Nearly every indigenous person that came in contact with a European settler was either killed by a disease, killed in the slave trade, killed in war, or died of a broken heart. And while it certainly didn't all happen in one year, the introduction of European settlers to the Americas ended up killing 90% of the indigenous population. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza decimated communities that had no immunity to these foreign illnesses. I guess one could argue that the events of 1492 had positive effects on much of humanity, leading to the age of exploration and the eventual globalization of trade and culture that brought us things like pizza and chocolate. However, the near extinction of an entire continent civilization does put it on our list. Number 8, 2008. This is probably the height of recency bias, but
I was alive at that time. What the fuck do you mean?
Who cares? It sucked. 2008 was the year the entire world realized that rich people just basically make up how much money there is. And for a number of reasons too complicated to go into in this video, something called Lehman Brothers went out of business, and then the entire global economy collapsed.
We know this one.
Stock markets around the world crashed. The American auto industry nearly went belly up, and the cost of food and gas went through the roof. It was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, causing millions of Americans to lose their jobs and homes. Also, if you've ever wondered, why do houses cost so much these days? Well, in the aftermath of the 2008 mortgage crisis, new home construction basically stopped for about 10 years because nobody could get a loan. And since there wasn't a 10-year hiatus on unprotected sex, we now have way too many people and way too few houses. So thanks again 2008 for still ruining all of our lives. What? China and Australia's economy actually grew during the Great Recession?
Because most people in China and Australia and basically other countries invested in things after that because these countries were wars before this. So they were the developing countries at the time.
I mean, America isn't the center of the universe. Number 7, 73,000 BC. Okay, so we're a little loosey-goosey on the exact year, but
where are we getting this data from? Who the fuck told you? You know what? 73,000 BC, you know what? It was bad, man. Like, man, it was fuck me, man. Like, who told you this shit?
Trust me, whenever it was bad. Rewind Earth's clock 70 or so millennia, and you'll witness what's known as a supervolcano eruption. This particular event is known as the Toba Catastrophe and is probably the thing Indonesia is second most famous for after Komodo dragons. This eruption set off a 10-year volcanic winter that nearly eliminated the entire human species. The Toba eruption released so much volcanic ash into the atmosphere that it blocked sunlight, leading to a drastic drop in global temperatures. The few survivors faced harsh conditions, with scarce food and resources, struggling to maintain their communities. The entire human population left on Earth was somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people, or roughly the size of Brandon, South Dakota. You've never heard of Brandon, South Dakota? Okay, Madison Square Garden can hold around 20,000 people, so the entire population left on Earth after that eruption could fit in MSG.
My question is, who told you that happened at 72,000 years ago? Like, still don't know the timeline.
Twice. This phenomenon is known as a genetic bottleneck, and is also why we're all kind of related. Number 6, 1929. The Roaring Twenties came to an abrupt end in 1929 when the US stock market crashed, setting off, stop me if you've heard this before, a global economic collapse.
Okay.
The Great Depression that followed was a decade-long economic disaster that affected almost every country in the world. Mental health was at an all-time low immediately following the market crash. Self-deletion rates were so high that some hotel operators in New York City would ask guests if they needed a room for sleeping or jumping out of. That's real. In the US, 1 in 4 people became unemployed, and wages for the remaining workforce were basically cut in half. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight, and many people lost their homes and savings. One farmer of the day knew he couldn't afford to feed his sheep, so he slit their throats and threw them down a canyon instead of letting them starve. It's like, what? They don't like sheep? The events of 1929 set off a decade of economic hardship that culminated in Earth's favorite pastime, World War.
Yep.
Number 5, 1601. If you take one thing away from this video, it should be that volcanoes are bad. So bad, in fact, that one volcano in Peru basically turned the lights off for the whole planet. The eruption of Huayna Patina in 1600 was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, spewing vast amounts of ash into the atmosphere. The summer of 1601 was known as the summer with no sunshine. Sunlight levels dramatically decreased everywhere in the world, causing mass famine, but nowhere more so than Russia. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures and livestock death. A third of the Russian population starving to death in the 2 years.
Wait, what the fuck is he doing? He's not starving. That's wanking.
Following the eruption. No sunshine also meant it was extremely cold, so to keep warm, many in the region turned to killing any animal with fur they could find, not just for food, but also to create clothing and blankets. Accounts from the time describe people so desperate for food that they ate grass, their pets, and each other, which means all of us are just one cloudy summer away from cannibalism. Number 4, 1942. Not much to see here, just worldwide violence and genocide resulting in millions of deaths. At the tail end of 1941, Japan made a monumental strategic error and, not so elegantly, insisted that the US become heavily involved in World War II. This essentially turned America into a death factory, where every able-bodied human was either making stuff that killed people or just killing people. The war effort mobilized entire populations, leading to the development of new weapons and technologies, including the Manhattan Project, which would cause all kinds of problems for future humans. Meanwhile, soldiers and civilians in Russia and China were dying by the thousands every day. The brutal fighting on the Eastern Front and the Pacific Theater claimed millions of lives. Nazi Germany continued its war crimes and genocide, so not great. Number 3, 1943.
Literally the year after that. So top 4 is 43, 1942 and 43. What the fuck?
Like that. But again, 1943 saw some of the deadliest battles of World War II. The Battle of Stalingrad, one of the bloodiest battles in history, ended in early 1943 with the defeat of the German army. This marked a turning point in the war, but came at a staggering cost of over 2 million casualties. In the Pacific, the Battle of Guadalcanal and the continued island-hopping campaign resulted in massive losses on both sides. And Nazi Germany continued doing Nazi Germany things. So again, a horrible time. Number 2, 1347.
Okay.
Welcome to medieval times. You really can't say anything about the mid-1300s that doesn't involve the bubonic plague. In 1347, the Black Death began ravishing most of Eurasia and parts of North Africa. Within a few years, the plague killed roughly a third of Europe, which probably put a pretty big dent into the cappuccino and scarf industries. The plague was caused by a bacterium in the fleas of rats, and rats were basically the podcasts of the 1300s. Completely unwanted, but absolutely everyone had them. Death from the bubonic plague was swift, but painful. An infected person would develop horribly swollen lymph nodes, often accompanied by fever and diarrhea, and would usually be dead in under a week. Medicine at the time was primitive, to say the least. A popular cure for the plague included taking a healthy chicken, plucking its back and bottom clean, and then strapping it to the patient's open sores.
They were fucking chickens to stay alive. What the fuck? Wait, what did he say?
Primitive, to say the least. A popular cure for the plague included taking a healthy chicken, plucking its back and bottom clean, and then strapping it to the patient's open sores. The idea was if the chicken became ill, it was helping to pull out the disease from the patient. Okay, let's check your chicken today. Oh, awesome, it's almost dead. You're doing great.
What the fuck is this shit? So you're telling me if you got COVID, we could have done this? Where was this? Why am I not coughing into a chicken's ass?
This would be repeated until the patient or the chicken died, often both in many cases. Chickens weren't the only animal rubbed on boils. Plague doctors also tried rubbing cut-up pieces of snakes on them as well. See, snakes were considered evil, and so was the plague. So the idea was that if evil things liked other evil things, putting the snake on a boil would trick the plague into following the snake and leave the patient's body. Another cutting-edge cure for the Black Death was eating crushed emeralds. People who couldn't afford emeralds would drink arsenic or mercury instead, which probably was just a little less effective than the chicken and the snake. All the anguish from this pandemic began to pull society apart at the seams. Many people took the chaos of the situation as an opportunity to steal from the sick and weak. Needless to say, people were so scared to help one another. Many were left to die alone in misery. It took centuries for Europe and other parts of the world to recover
People
from
were
the
just
mass
fucking chickens
destruction
all over
of
the world.
Black
Okay.
Death. Number 1, 536.
That's a room number.
This is essentially a greatest hits of all the worst moments from human history. Things kick off with our old friend the supervolcano, which sent a cloud of volcanic ash over the entire northern hemisphere. This left most of the world in virtual darkness for 18 months, brought the global temperature down 30 degrees, and caused, say it with me, widespread famine. Things were extra bad in China, where dust rained to the ground by the handful, and 70 to 80% of the population died. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures, starvation, and social unrest. But wait, there's more! On top of extreme food scarcity, a plague broke out in Europe. People would break out in pus-filled boils before perishing by the thousands, making disposal of the bodies impossible. Bodies were heaped in piles or thrown into the sea, only to wash back up days later. And the southern hemisphere wasn't spared. To make things worse, 536 had a powerful El Niño that warmed the waters off the South American coast, killing fish stocks, flooding the coasts, and you guessed it, causing widespread famine. So yeah, 536 kind of runs away with it.
So nothing in the 1700s. I was wrong. Fuck all of that. I just figured out people in the 1300s was fucking chickens. That's interesting. But when I do it,